My name is Sarah, and I'm 27 years old. I was staring at the eviction notice my parents had just slid under my apartment door when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother: either you start watching Lily's twins for free, or rent goes up to $3,000 next month. The apartment I'd been renting from them for 5 years. The same parents who'd given my younger sister Lily a house as a wedding gift. I crumpled the paper, knowing this was just the beginning. Before we dive into this wild family drama, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever dealt with toxic family dynamics or unfair treatment from relatives, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Trust me, what my parents did next will shock you, but my response? They never saw it coming. Let's get into how I turned their manipulation into my liberation. Looking back now, I should have seen this coming. Being the eldest daughter in my family meant carrying responsibilities that my younger sister Lily never had to touch. While she was pampered and protected, I'd been working since I was 16, saving every penny I could for my dream of becoming a nurse. My parents, Robert and Diana, owned several rental properties around town, a small empire they'd built over 30 years. They'd always prided themselves on being successful landlords, but their success came with a price that I was apparently expected to pay. The apartment I rented from them was a modest one-bedroom unit above their garage. For 5 years, I'd paid them $800 a month, which was below market rate, sure, but it was the only help they'd ever given me. They called it their way of supporting my education, though they never failed to remind me how generous they were being. Meanwhile, Lily had received a 3-bedroom house as a wedding gift when she married Brett 2 years ago. The difference in treatment wasn't subtle, but I'd learned to swallow my hurt and focus on my goals. I was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Days at a medical clinic as a receptionist, learning everything I could about the healthcare field, and evenings at a restaurant downtown. Every dollar that didn't go to rent or basic necessities went straight into my nursing school fund. I was so close to having enough for my first year's tuition, just another 6 months of saving and I could finally apply. Lily's life couldn't have been more different. She'd married Brett, a software engineer from a wealthy family, and they'd had twins almost immediately. Marcus and Emma were 3 years old now, adorable but completely undisciplined. Lily refused to hire help, claiming she didn't trust strangers with her precious babies. But the truth was she enjoyed playing the martyr mom on social media while doing the bare minimum actual parenting. That Tuesday evening, I'd just gotten home from a 12-hour shift when I heard footsteps on the stairs leading to my apartment. My parents never visited without calling first, so the knock on my door made my stomach drop. Through the peephole, I saw them standing there, my mother clutching her purse like a weapon, my father checking his watch impatiently. "Sarah, open up. We need to talk," my mother called out, her voice carrying that edge I'd learned to fear as a child. I opened the door, still in my restaurant uniform that smelled like grease and exhaustion. They pushed past me without invitation, my mother's eyes already scanning my small space with disapproval. "Place is a mess," she commented, though I'd just vacuumed that morning. My father sat on my second-hand couch without being invited, pulling out his phone to show he'd rather be anywhere else. This was their dynamic: mother attacked while father provided silent support through his presence. "What's this about?" I asked, though the eviction notice burning a hole in my pocket gave me a pretty good idea. My mother settled into my only armchair, arranging her skirt with practiced precision before fixing me with her signature look of disappointed expectation. "Lily needs help with the twins," she began without preamble. "She's starting a new business venture and requires reliable childcare. As her sister, you should be happy to support her success." The way she said it, like it was already decided, made my blood pressure spike. "I work 2 jobs, Mom. When exactly would I watch the twins?" I tried to keep my voice level, reasonable. Getting emotional with Diana Morrison never ended well for anyone, especially me. She waved her hand dismissively, her wedding ring catching the light from my cheap overhead fixture. "You'll have to make adjustments. Family comes first, Sarah. You've always been selfish about your time." The accusation hung in the air between us, 30 years of similar statements echoing in those words. Selfish for working. Selfish for studying. Selfish for having dreams that didn't revolve around making Lily's life easier. My father finally looked up from his phone, his expression carved from stone. If you can't help your sister, we'll need to reassess our financial arrangement here. Market rate for this apartment is $3,000 a month. We've been more than generous, but generosity has its limits. The threat landed like a physical blow. $3,000 would destroy me. That was more than I made at both jobs combined. They knew this, had calculated it perfectly. The eviction notice suddenly made sense. This wasn't a negotiation, it was an ambush. You're blackmailing me into being Lily's unpaid nanny? The words escaped before I could stop them, raw and accusatory. My mother's face flushed with anger while my father's expression grew colder, if that was even possible. Blackmail is such an ugly word, my mother said, standing with theatrical offense. We're simply saying that if you can't contribute to this family's well-being, then we need to run our business properly. 40 hours a week with the twins, or market rate rent. You have 48 hours to decide. They left as abruptly as they'd arrived, my mother pausing at the door to deliver one final blow. Your sister gave us grandchildren, Sarah. The least you can do is help raise them. It's not like you have children of your own to worry about. The door closed with a decisive click, leaving me alone with the impossible choice they'd presented. I sank onto my couch, the same spot my father had just vacated, and tried to do the math. $3,000 in rent meant I'd need to find 3 additional jobs just to break even. Moving wasn't an option either. I'd checked rental prices recently out of curiosity, and everything within commuting distance of my jobs was equally expensive or required first and last month plus security deposit. Money I didn't have because every spare penny went toward nursing school. 40 hours a week of free childcare meant quitting at least one job, probably the clinic position that was giving me valuable experience. It meant putting my dreams on hold indefinitely while Lily pursued whatever hobby she was calling a business this month. Last year it had been jewelry making. Before that, essential oils. Each venture funded by Brett's family, each one abandoned within months when Lily got bored. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Mom told me the good news. Can't wait to have you watching the twins. They're going to love spending time with Auntie Sarah. Followed by a string of heart emojis that made me want to throw my phone against the wall. Of course she already knew. This had probably been her idea all along. I spent the rest of the night lying awake, staring at the ceiling and trying to find a way out of this trap. By morning, I hadn't slept a minute, but I'd made a decision. I'd agree to their terms temporarily while I figured out an escape plan. What I didn't know then was that this was exactly what they expected, and they'd prepared for it. The real manipulation hadn't even started yet. The next morning arrived with an aggressive pounding on my door at 6 a.m. Through bleary eyes, I stumbled to answer it, finding Lily standing there with Marcus and Emma in tow. She looked immaculate as always, her blonde hair perfectly styled, designer workout clothes that had never seen actual exercise, and a smile that didn't reach her calculating eyes. Rise and shine, sis. Ready for your first day with these angels? She pushed past me, the twins following like tiny tornadoes. Emma immediately grabbed my coffee table magazine and began tearing pages while Marcus headed straight for my kitchen cabinets. Lily settled onto my couch, already scrolling through her phone. Lily, I haven't even agreed to anything yet. Mom said I had 48 hours to decide. I tried to corral Marcus away from my cleaning supplies, my brain still foggy from lack of sleep. Lily's laugh tinkled like broken glass, sharp and dismissive. Oh, Sarah, always so dramatic. Mom told me you'd come around. You always do. She stood, gathering her designer purse and heading for the door. I'll be back by 8 tonight. The twins haven't had breakfast yet, and Marcus needs his allergy medicine at noon. Instructions are in Emma's backpack. 8 tonight? Lily, I have to work at 5. But she was already gone, the click of her heels on the stairs fading quickly. I stood there in my pajamas, 2 3-year-olds destroying my apartment, feeling the trap close around me completely. The day was a disaster from start to finish. Emma refused to eat anything except cookies, which Lily hadn't provided. Marcus found my hidden candy stash and consumed enough sugar to power a small city. Neither child listened to a word I said, and why would they? They'd clearly never faced a consequence in their short lives. By the time I had to call in sick to the restaurant, I was covered in finger paint, apple juice, and something sticky I couldn't identify. My phone exploded with messages throughout the day. First, my Aunt Ruth, my mother's sister who lived across town. Heard you're finally stepping up to help family. About time you stopped being so selfish with your career obsession. Then my cousins on Facebook, posting passive-aggressive memes about family loyalty and the importance of supporting successful siblings. The coordinated campaign was obvious. My parents had primed the entire extended family with their version of events before I'd even had a chance to process what was happening. According to them, I was the ungrateful daughter living in subsidized housing who refused to help her overwhelmed sister despite having no real responsibilities of my own. When Jake, my co-worker from the restaurant, texted to check if I was okay, I nearly broke down crying. Family emergency, I replied, which wasn't exactly a lie. The emergency was my family. Around 3 p.m., I received a text from Brett, Lily's husband. Hey Sarah, heard you're helping with the kids. Really appreciate it. I can throw you $50 a week for gas and stuff. $50 for 40 hours of work. The insult was so breathtaking I actually laughed, a hysterical sound that made the twins stop destroying my bathroom long enough to stare at me. When 5 o'clock came and went with no sign of Lily, I texted her repeatedly. In a meeting, she finally responded at 6. Be there soon. 8 p.m. turned into 9, then 10. When she finally showed up at 10:30, she barely acknowledged my exhausted state or destroyed apartment. Thanks so much. Same time tomorrow. She gathered the twins, who had finally crashed on my couch an hour earlier, and left without apology or explanation. I surveyed the wreckage of my home, calculating how many hours of tips I'd lost at the restaurant, how much closer this brought me to losing everything I'd worked for. My manager at the restaurant was understanding but firm when I called him. Sarah, I like you, but I need reliable people. One more no-show and I'll have to let you go. The clinic was less forgiving. They'd already found someone to cover my shift and made it clear that repeated absences would result in termination. By the end of the week, I was a shell of myself. Lily's drop-off times grew earlier while her pickups pushed later. The promised instructions for Marcus's medication never materialized, leading to a terrifying afternoon when he had an allergic reaction to something and I had to guess at the right response. When I confronted Lily about it, she laughed it off. You handled it fine. See, you're a natural. My parents made their first check-in visit on Friday afternoon, arriving while the twins napped on my bed. My mother surveyed my destroyed apartment with satisfaction, as if the chaos proved her point about my inadequacy. Lily tells us you're doing wonderfully, she said, stepping over a pile of broken crayons. Though she mentioned you've been complaining about the hours. I hope you're not making this difficult for her, Sarah. She's trying to build something important. What exactly is she building? I asked, exhausted beyond the point of caution. She hasn't mentioned what this business actually is. My father looked up from where he was examining my bookshelf, his expression darkening at my tone. Your sister doesn't owe you explanations. You owe her support. Don't forget, your current living situation is contingent on your cooperation. He pulled out one of my nursing textbooks, flipping through it dismissively. Still wasting money on these, I see. That's when I noticed other things had been moved in my apartment. Small things, but noticeable. My mail had been sorted, my desk drawers slightly askew. Have you been in my apartment? The question came out sharper than intended, but the violation of privacy on top of everything else was too much. My mother's smile was all teeth and no warmth. We own this property, Sarah. We have every right to ensure it's being properly maintained. In fact, we'll be doing more frequent inspections now that children are spending time here. We'll need to childproof, of course. Install safety locks, cover outlets, remove anything dangerous. The implication was clear. This wasn't temporary. They were planning to make my apartment a permanent daycare center for Lily's children. As they left, my mother paused at the door with one final manipulation. "Oh, I told the ladies at church about your wonderful sacrifice for your sister. They're all so impressed. Pastor Williams wants to recognize you during Sunday service for being such a devoted family member." The trap wasn't just financial anymore, they were creating social pressure too, making it impossible for me to back out without looking like a monster to our entire community. That night, I sat in my ruined apartment, calculating and recalculating numbers that never added up to freedom. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Lily, probably wondering why I hadn't responded to her text about watching the twins on Saturday too. The weekend I was supposed to work doubles at both jobs to make up for the lost weekday income. Something had to give, and I was terrified it would be me. My dreams of nursing school felt like they were dissolving with each passing day, replaced by the endless demands of 2 children who weren't mine and never would be. But as I sat there among the wreckage of my life, a small flame of anger began to burn through the exhaustion. They thought they had me trapped, but they'd underestimated something crucial. They'd underestimated how much I was willing to fight for my future. I just needed to figure out how to fight back against an entire family who held all the cards. What I didn't know yet was that some of those cards were marked, and I was about to find allies in the most unexpected places. Turning my exploitation int. Monday morning of the second week, I made a decision that felt like surrender but was actually the first step in my eventual liberation. I called my manager at the clinic and arranged to switch to part-time evening shifts. The pay cut was devastating, but it would allow me to watch the twins during the day and still maintain some income. The restaurant had to go completely, they couldn't accommodate my new restricted availability. "I'm proud of you for putting family first," my mother said when I informed her of the changes. The satisfaction in her voice made me want to scream. "This is what responsible adults do, Sarah. Maybe you're finally growing up." The routine that developed was soul-crushing. Lily would arrive between 6 and 6:30 each morning, always perfectly dressed, always in a rush. The twins would be half asleep, still in pajamas, with bags of supplies that never included everything they needed. She'd breeze out with promises to be back by 5 that we both knew were lies. What made it worse was discovering the truth about her business venture. Jake, my former restaurant coworker, lived in the same upscale neighborhood as Lily and Brett. He started texting me updates on her daily activities. "Your sister just pulled into the country club," he'd write. Or "saw her at the spa again. 3-hour appointment according to the receptionist." The photographic evidence was damning. While I was wrestling 2 toddlers through meals and meltdowns, Lily was getting massages, taking yoga classes, and having 4-hour lunches with her mommy blogger friends. Her Instagram told a different story, of course. There, she was the hardworking entrepreneur mom, building her empire while gracefully balancing family life. "So blessed to have family support while I pursue my dreams," one post read, accompanied by a photo of her at a coffee shop with her laptop. The comments were full of praise for her dedication. No mention of the sister providing free labor to make those dreams possible. The confrontation came on a Thursday afternoon when she showed up 2 hours late to find me cleaning vomit off my couch. Emma had gotten into something at lunch that hadn't agreed with her, and I'd spent the afternoon dealing with a sick, miserable child while trying to keep Marcus from destroying everything in reach. "God, Sarah, you look terrible," were her first words. Not concern for her sick daughter or apology for being late. Just criticism of my appearance after 8 hours of childcare hell. Something inside me snapped. "Where were you, Lily? Emma's been sick for hours." I tried calling 20 times. I stood there, covered in various bodily fluids, exhausted beyond measure, and watched her check her manicured nails for chips. I had meetings. Important ones. Not that you'd understand what it's like trying to build something meaningful. She gathered Emma with theatrical concern now that there was vomit involved. Maybe if you fed them better food, this wouldn't happen. I'll have to speak to Mom about your negligence. Negligence? I'm doing this for free, Lily. 40+ hours a week of free childcare while you get spa treatments and play entrepreneur. The words erupted before I could stop them, weeks of frustration boiling over. Her face transformed from fake concern to real fury. How dare you spy on me? What I do with my time is none of your business. You're lucky Mom and Dad even give you that discount on rent. Do you know what they could get for that apartment? You're basically stealing from our inheritance every month you pay below market rate. The twisted logic was so typically Lily, turning my exploitation into me somehow victimizing her. But she wasn't done. She pulled out her phone, and I knew what was coming before she even started typing. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with messages. My parents, demanding I apologize immediately. Aunt Ruth, calling me ungrateful and jealous. Cousins posting vague but pointed Facebook statuses about people who couldn't support successful family members due to their own bitterness. But it was my mother's arrival an hour later that really drove home how coordinated this manipulation was. She didn't knock, just used her key to enter my apartment while I was cleaning up the last of the vomit damage. Lily's in tears, she announced, as if I'd committed murder. How could you accuse her of lying when she's working so hard to provide for her family? The gaslighting was so blatant I actually laughed, which only made her angrier. She's not working, Mom. She's using me for free babysitting while she plays around. I have proof. But she cut me off with a raised hand, her wedding ring glinting like a weapon. I don't want to hear your excuses. You agreed to help, and now you're trying to back out by making up stories. Your father and I are very disappointed. In fact, we've decided the rent situation needs to be addressed immediately. My blood ran cold. You said I had time if I helped with the twins. The tremor in my voice betrayed my fear, and she smiled, knowing she had me exactly where she wanted. That was before you showed your true colors. Jealousy is ugly, Sarah. If you can't support your sister with good grace, then we need to reconsider everything. You have until the end of the month to decide, continue helping Lily without complaint, or pay market rate. The end of the month was 10 days away. 10 days to either accept my fate as an unpaid servant or find $3,000 I didn't have. She left me standing there, surrounded by the remnants of my nephew's destruction and my niece's illness, feeling more trapped than ever. That night, something strange happened. Brett texted me, asking if we could meet for coffee. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another manipulation, but something in his wording seemed different. Please. It's important and not what you think. We met at a small cafe downtown the next morning before Lily's arrival. Brett looked exhausted, stress lines I'd never noticed before etched deep in his face. He ordered black coffee and got straight to the point. I know what's really going on, he said quietly. With Lily, I mean. The fake business, the way your parents are treating you. I've been trying to get her to stop, but she won't listen to me anymore. The relief of having someone acknowledge the reality of my situation was overwhelming. I found myself telling him everything. The financial stranglehold, the social manipulation, the way my dreams were being systematically destroyed. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. It's worse than you know, he said when I finished. Your parents aren't just using your rent to control you. Lily told me they've been planning this for years. They want you available as a permanent caregiver, first for the twins, then for them when they get older. The nursing school thing terrifies them because it would give you independence. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. The calculated cruelty of planning my servitude for years was breathtaking. But Brett wasn't finished. I'm planning to leave her, he admitted. The spending is out of control, the lying is constant, and she started being cruel to the kids when no one's watching. I've been documenting everything for custody. But Sarah, you need to know something else. Your parents have been moving money around, using your name. Lily let it slip during one of our fights. My hand shook as I processed this information. Identity theft on top of everything else? Brett slid a flash drive across the table. Screenshots of texts between Lily and your mom. Records of her real activities. Use it if you need to. You don't deserve this. As I walked home, flash drive burning in my pocket, I noticed a for rent sign on a building near the clinic. The universe seemed to be sending me a message, but I still couldn't see how to break free. My parents held all the cards, my home, my family relationships, apparently even my financial identity. But that small flash drive represented something they couldn't control, the truth. And as I pulled up to find Lily's car already in my driveway, the twins screaming audible from the street, I realized something important. They might have me trapped for now, but every tyrant makes mistakes. And thanks to Brett, I was starting to see theirs. The question was whether I could survive long enough to use what I was learning. As I climbed the stairs to another day of unpaid servitude, I made myself a promise. This wouldn't be my life forever. I just had to be smart enough to find my way out. The flash drive Brett had given me contained more than I'd initially realized. Late that night, after a particularly brutal 15-hour day with the twins, I finally had time to go through everything. What I found made my hands shake with rage and disbelief. Text messages between Lily and my mother stretched back 2 years, long before this current scheme. They discussed my problematic independence and how to best keep me useful to the family. One particular exchange made my blood run cold. Mom, Sarah's been looking at nursing programs again. Lily. Can't have that. We need her available. Maybe it's time to implement the rent plan? Mom, your father agrees. We'll make it seem like her choice. But worse was yet to come. Screenshots of bank statements showed regular transfers from accounts in my name that I'd never opened. Property documents listed me as a co-signer on loans I'd never agreed to. My parents had been using my credit and identity for years, building their real estate empire on the foundation of my good name. I was still processing this when my laptop dinged with an email. The sender made my heart stop, Helen Morrison, my father's estranged sister. I hadn't seen Aunt Helen in over 10 years, not since an explosive family fight that no one would properly explain to me. Sarah, the email began, I've been watching from afar, hoping your parents would change. They haven't. What they're doing to you is what they tried to do to me. It's time you knew the truth about the Morrison family pattern. Can we meet? Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a truck stop diner 40 miles outside town where no one would recognize us. Helen looked older but unbowed, her eyes sharp with intelligence and old pain. You look exhausted, were her first words, delivered with more genuine concern than I'd heard from family in years. Let me guess, they've got you watching Lily's kids while threatening your housing? At my shocked expression, she laughed bitterly. It's the family playbook, sweetheart. They did it to me with your father's kids from his first marriage. The revelation that my father had been married before was shocking enough, but Helen wasn't done. She pulled out a folder thick with documents, sliding it across the cracked Formica table. Your grandmother left you money, Sarah. $50,000, specifically designated for your education. Your parents have been sitting on it, collecting interest, using it as collateral for loans. It's all here, documented. She tapped the folder with one weathered finger. They did the same with my inheritance until I got a lawyer. I opened the folder with trembling hands. There it was in black and white, my grandmother's will, dated 3 years before her death, with my name clearly listed. $50,000 that could have paid for nursing school twice over, sitting in accounts my parents controlled, generating income they spent on Lily. Why didn't anyone tell me? My voice cracked with the weight of betrayal. Helen's expression softened with sympathy. Because the family closed ranks. Your parents threatened to cut everyone off financially if anyone told you. Most of our relatives benefit from their property empire in some way. Cheap rent, loans, investment opportunities. Your suffering is the price of their comfort. She explained the pattern. Identify the most responsible child, usually the eldest daughter. Create financial dependence through small favors that seem like help. Gradually increase demands while threatening to withdraw support. Use family pressure and social manipulation to ensure compliance. Eventually, install them as permanent caregivers for both children and aging parents. I escaped by marrying young and moving across the country, Helen said. Even then, they tried to pull me back when your father's first wife left. Said it was my duty as a sister to raise his kids. When I refused, they turned the entire family against me. What happened to the kids? I asked, horrified by the implications. Helen's smile was grim. Foster care. Your parents wouldn't take them without free labor to help. Told everyone I was selfish for not sacrificing my life. Sound familiar? It did, sickeningly so. Those kids are adults now, by the way. David and Monica. They'd love to meet you. Monica. The name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it. Helen noticed my confusion and clarified. Monica's a lawyer now. Specializes in family financial abuse cases. Funny how childhood trauma shapes career choices. We talked for 2 more hours. Helen shared every dirty secret, every financial manipulation, every family pattern she'd observed over decades. By the time we parted, I had her contact information and a promise of support. More importantly, I had the beginning of a plan. I drove home in a daze, the full scope of my family's betrayal crushing in its completeness. This wasn't just about free babysitting or even financial control. This was about systematic exploitation dating back generations, a family business built on the sacrificed dreams of daughters deemed too responsible to fight back. Back at my apartment, I found an eviction notice taped to my door. The end-of-the-month deadline had been moved up. I had 72 hours to agree to their terms or vacate. Inside, my belongings had been disturbed again. This time, they hadn't tried to hide it. Drawers were open, papers scattered, my nursing school brochures torn in half and left on my bed like a threat. My phone had 30 missed calls from Lily and a dozen from my mother. I ignored them all, focusing instead on documenting everything. Photos of the vandalism, screenshots of the eviction notice, copies of everything Helen had given me. I uploaded it all to a cloud account my parents didn't know about, then made physical copies to hide at work. The next morning, Lily arrived with the twins and an ultimatum. Mom says you have one last chance to apologize and commit to helping our family. Otherwise, you're out today. She stood in my doorway like she owned it, which technically her parents did. The twins were already destroying my living room, their chaos a physical manifestation of how my life felt. I need time to think, I managed, my mind racing with everything I'd learned. Lily's smile was pure predator, nothing sisterly about it. Think fast. I'll be back at 10 tonight. If you're not here with a better attitude, Dad will change the locks at midnight. She left the twins and swept out, confident in her victory. I spent the day in a fog, mechanically caring for Marcus and Emma while my mind worked through possibilities. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Heard you're having housing trouble. My roommate just moved out if you need a place. It was a lifeline, but one that would mean giving up any chance of fighting back. Then Brett called. I heard what they're doing. It's accelerating because Lily's pregnant again. They want you locked in before the baby arrives. Another child to care for, another chain to bind me. The walls were closing in faster than I'd anticipated. That afternoon, my mother arrived unannounced, using her key despite my presence. She surveyed the scene with satisfaction, me exhausted and defeated, the twins napping after another destructive morning, my dreams quite literally torn to pieces on my bed. Have you made your decision? She asked, settling into my chair like a queen on her throne. Your father's already shown the apartment to potential renters. Amazing what people will pay for this location. I know about Grandma's money, I said quietly, watching her face carefully. The flash of panic before she composed herself told me everything. I know about all of it. Her recovery was quick, I had to give her that. I don't know what lies you've been told, but your grandmother's estate was distributed according to her wishes. If you're suggesting otherwise, you'd better have proof. I do, I lied, not mentioning that Helen's documents wouldn't hold up in court without the originals. But the bluff worked. My mother's mask slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Even if that were true, which it isn't, you'd need lawyers to fight us. Lawyers cost money you don't have. Be smart, Sarah. Accept your role in this family, and everyone benefits. Fight us, and you'll lose everything. She left with the casual cruelty of someone certain of their victory. But she'd made a mistake. She'd confirmed that there was something to fight for, that my suspicions were grounded in reality. And she'd revealed their greatest weakness, they thought I was alone. That night, while the twins finally slept and Lily still hadn't returned, I made a decision. I pulled out the card Helen had given me and dialed Monica's number. The voice that answered was professional but warm. Sarah? Aunt Helen told me you might call. I've been waiting 20 years to help someone take down your parents. How soon can we meet? Monica's law office was a modest suite in a building downtown, but her credentials on the wall spoke of serious legal firepower. Yale Law, specialization in financial abuse and estate fraud, a track record of taking down corrupt family dynasties. As my father's daughter from his hidden first marriage, she had personal stakes in this fight. Coffee, she offered, gesturing to a worn leather chair across from her desk. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. I gratefully accepted, sinking into the chair with exhaustion that went bone deep. Jake had insisted on driving me to this meeting, worried about my ability to focus after another brutal night. Lily hadn't shown up until midnight, then demanded I keep the twins overnight because Emma was running a fever. I'd spent the hours until dawn alternating between comforting a sick child and planning my escape. Monica reviewed the documents I'd brought, her expression growing darker with each page. This is extensive financial fraud, she said finally. Identity theft, estate manipulation, loan fraud. Your parents aren't just controlling you, they're criminals. But can we prove it? I asked, voicing the fear that had kept me awake. Mom said I'd need money for lawyers, money I don't have. Monica's smile was sharp with purpose. That's where you're wrong. First, I'm taking this case pro bono. Your parents destroyed my childhood, stopping them from destroying yours is payment enough. Second, what they did with your grandmother's money is criminal. The state has a victims fund for cases like this. We can file for emergency support while we build the case. She pulled out a legal pad and began outlining our strategy. Document everything. Record conversations when legal. Gather witness statements. Build an airtight case that would not only free me but potentially send my parents to prison. We need more evidence of the pattern, Monica explained. Helen's documentation helps, but we need current proof. Can you handle staying there a bit longer while we gather what we need? The thought made my stomach turn, but I nodded. Freedom required sacrifice. Monica must have seen my distress because she leaned forward with unexpected compassion. You're not alone in this anymore. Helen's been building a network of people your parents have wronged. You'd be surprised how many enemies they've made over the years. As if on cue, her office door opened and Mia entered, followed by Brett and two people I didn't recognize. Monica made introductions. The strangers were former tenants my parents had illegally evicted, both willing to testify about their practices. We've all been sharing information, Mia explained, squeezing my shoulder supportively. Your parents have hurt a lot of people, Sarah. We're done letting them get away with it. Brett looked uncomfortable but determined. I've been recording Lily's admissions about the fraud. She brags about it when she's wine drunk. I have hours of audio that Monica says are admissible since I'm a party to the conversations. The next hour was spent coordinating our efforts. Monica assigned tasks like a general preparing for war. Mia would research property records. The former tenants would gather others willing to testify. Brett would continue documenting Lily's spending and admissions. Jake, who'd been quietly supportive throughout, volunteered to help me secretly move important belongings out of my apartment. What about the twins? I asked, guilt creeping in despite everything. They're innocent in this. If I'm not watching them. Brett's expression hardened with resolve I'd never seen before. I'm filing for emergency custody based on neglect. Lily leaves them with anyone who'll take them, doesn't provide proper supplies or medical information. The fever incident last night? I have texts where she admits she knew Emma was sick but didn't want to cancel her spa day. The kids deserve better. Helen arrived as the meeting was ending, bringing with her a small suitcase and an envelope. Your grandmother's journals, she said, handing me the case. She documented everything about your parents' financial manipulations. And this, she pressed the envelope into my hands, is a check for $5,000. Consider it a loan against your inheritance. I tried to refuse, but Helen's expression brooked no argument. You need resources to fight. First and last month's rent on a new place, money to live on while you transition. Don't let pride keep you trapped. Monica had been busy on her computer during this exchange. I found something interesting, she announced. Your parents never properly registered as landlords with the city. They owe years of back taxes and penalties. The city offers bounties for reporting tax evaders. If we play this right, you could see a significant payout. The irony was delicious. My parents' greed had left them vulnerable to their own tenants' revenge. Every corner cut, every tax dodged, every law bent would come back to haunt them. We spent another hour refining our plan. I would continue the charade for 2 more weeks while gathering evidence. Monica would file the necessary paperwork to freeze the accounts containing my inheritance. Mia had already found me a small studio apartment near the clinic, available immediately thanks to her connection with the landlord. Your parents' biggest advantage is that they assume you're alone and helpless, Monica summarized. They've created a narrative where you're the selfish daughter refusing to help family. We're going to flip that script. By the time we're done, everyone will know exactly who they really are. As Jake drove me back to my apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. The alliance forming around me was proof that my parents' cruelty had consequences, that their victims were ready to fight back. The twins were still with me when we arrived, Lily having texted that she needed another few hours. Jake helped me quietly pack essential items while the children napped. My nursing textbooks, important documents, grandmother's jewelry my parents didn't know I had. Everything went into boxes that Jake would store at his place. You're sure about this? He asked, carrying a box of my most precious possessions. They're going to go nuclear when they realize you're fighting back. I thought about the $50,000 stolen from me, the years of manipulation, the dreams deferred. They went nuclear the day they decided I was property instead of a person, I replied. I'm just returning fire. That evening, while feeding the twins dinner I'd had to buy myself because Lily had provided nothing, I practiced my performance. Defeated daughter, resigned to her fate, too tired to fight anymore. It wasn't hard to sell, exhaustion was real even if surrender was fake. When Lily finally appeared at 11 p.m., I delivered my rehearsed lines. You win. I'll watch them whenever you need. Just please don't make me homeless. Her triumph was ugly to witness, superiority mixed with contempt for my weakness. I knew you'd see sense, she preened, gathering her barely conscious children. Mom will be so pleased. Same time tomorrow, and Sarah? Try to do something about your appearance. You're embarrassing to be seen with. After she left, I sat in my destroyed apartment and allowed myself 5 minutes of tears. For the life I should have had, for the family that should have loved me, for the innocence lost to their greed. Then I dried my eyes and got to work. Monica had given me a list of items to document. Financial records, text messages, voicemails, photos of the apartment's condition after babysitting. Everything would build our case, brick by brick, until the wall of evidence was insurmountable. My phone buzzed with messages from the Alliance. Mia had found 3 more former tenants willing to testify. Brett had recorded Lily bragging about using my free labor. Helen had connected with a journalist interested in expose on family financial abuse. For the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled genuinely. My parents thought they were royalty ruling over subjects too weak to rebel. They were about to learn what happened when the peasants realized they outnumbered the crown. 2 weeks. I just had to survive 2 more weeks of servitude while my army gathered strength. Then we would strike, and the Morrison Empire would finally face justice for its crimes. The only question was whether they'd see it coming before it was too late to save themselves. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of exhaustion and careful documentation. I played my role perfectly, the defeated daughter resigned to her fate. My mother visited daily, satisfaction radiating from her as she watched me wrangle the twins without complaint. Lily grew even more careless, sometimes disappearing for entire days while I covered her absence. Then came the morning Monica said we had enough evidence. I served my parents with official notice about their violations of tenant law, delivered by a process server during their morning coffee. The document was comprehensive. Illegal entry, failure to register as landlords, tax evasion, and demanded compensation for damages. Their panic was immediate and gratifying. My father called 17 times in the first hour. My mother's texts evolved from confused to furious to pleading. But it was Lily's reaction that showed me how right I'd been to prepare for war. She appeared at my door at noon, no twins in sight for once, her face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful witch. After everything we've done for you." She pushed past me, waving her phone. "Do you know what you've done? Daddy says we could lose properties." "Good," I said simply, my practiced calm driving her to further fury. "Maybe you'll have to get actual jobs instead of living off my stolen inheritance." The mention of grandmother's money made her freeze, calculation replacing anger. "You can't prove anything about that," she said, but uncertainty colored her tone. "That money was used for family investments. You benefited too." The twisted logic was so typically Morrison, I almost laughed. I benefited by having my identity stolen and my credit used without permission? By being turned into your unpaid servant? We have different definitions of benefit, Lily. I moved to the door, holding it open. "I think you should leave." She left, but not before delivering a threat. "You'll regret this. We're family. Family protects each other, and you just declared war on all of us." The irony of her words clearly escaped her. For 3 days, I experienced something like peace. My parents retreated to consult lawyers. Lily stayed away. I worked my shifts at the clinic, slept full nights, and began to remember what normal felt like. I should have known it was the calm before the storm. Day 4, I came home from work to find my door ajar, lock drilled out. Inside was chaos. Not the childish destruction of the twins, but systematic vandalism. My furniture was destroyed, clothes shredded, personal items smashed. Spray paint on the walls spelled out variations of ungrateful and worse. My neighbors confirmed what I'd suspected. My parents had arrived with a locksmith and moving crew, claiming I'd abandoned the property and they needed to prepare it for new tenants. Mrs. Chen from next door had tried to intervene, but my father threatened her with eviction too. I called 911, but the responding officers treated it as a civil matter. "It's a landlord-tenant dispute," one explained, looking bored. "You'll need to handle this in court." The fact that all my belongings were destroyed apparently didn't constitute criminal behavior when landlords did it. Monica was furious but not surprised. "They're escalating because they're scared. This actually helps our case." "Did you get photos?" I had, extensively, before the shock fully set in. Everything I owned reduced to garbage bags on the lawn, years of careful saving and planning literally trashed. But they weren't done. That evening, as I sat in Mia's apartment trying to process the loss, my phone exploded with notifications. Lily had posted my personal information across social media, my social security number, bank details, medical history she'd somehow accessed. Her post claimed I was a mentally unstable elder abuser who'd threatened the family. Please be aware this person is dangerous and delusional, her post read. She's been fired from multiple jobs for theft and is now trying to extort money from our elderly parents. The lies were so outrageous they'd be funny if they weren't destroying my life. My manager at the clinic called an hour later. Sarah, I'm sorry, but we've been getting calls all day. Death threats, people saying they'll boycott us if we keep you. Corporate says I have to let you go. Just like that, my last source of income vanished. The coordinated attack was breathtaking in its cruelty. Every aspect of my life was under assault. Bank accounts mysteriously frozen due to suspicious activity. Credit cards cancelled. Even my phone service was shut off after someone reported it stolen. Monica worked frantically to counter each attack, but my parents had resources and connections she couldn't match immediately. They're trying to make you homeless and desperate, she explained during an emergency meeting. Classic abuse tactic. Break you down so you'll beg for their forgiveness. Brett provided unexpected support, publicly posting evidence of Lily's lies. My soon-to-be ex-wife is conducting a smear campaign against her sister to cover her own crimes, he wrote, attaching screenshots of her texts admitting to fraud. The custody battle was heating up, and Lily's public breakdown wasn't helping her case. But the damage to my life was real and immediate. With no income, no savings access, and no home, I was entirely dependent on my friend's charity. Mia's couch became my bed. Jake spotted me money for food. Helen paid Monica's filing fees. The same network my parents had tried to isolate me from became my lifeline. A week into my homelessness, something shifted. The local news picked up the story after Monica leaked documents showing the scope of my parents' fraud. Local landlords accused of years-long identity theft scheme ran with a photo of their property empire. Suddenly, their other victims felt empowered to speak up. The Facebook group Morrison Tenants for Justice gained 300 members in 2 days. Stories poured out: illegal evictions, stolen deposits, harassment, discrimination. My parents had built their empire on suffering, and the victims were finding their voices. But they still had cards to play. I was summoned to an emergency meeting at their lawyer's office, where they sat like disappointed royalty forced to negotiate with peasants. Their attorney, a sharp-faced man who looked at me like something unpleasant on his shoe, laid out their offer. Drop all claims, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and they'll give you $10,000 to start over somewhere else, he said. Leave the state, no contact with family, and this all goes away. Exile in exchange for survival. I looked at my parents, searching for any sign of the people who'd raised me. My mother's face was stone, my father's expression bored. They'd rather lose a daughter than admit wrongdoing or lose money. No, I said quietly. I want what's mine. My inheritance, damages for the theft and fraud, and public acknowledgement of what they did. The lawyer actually laughed. You're homeless, jobless, and effectively blacklisted in this town. Take the offer or leave with nothing. He pushed the papers across the table. You have 24 hours to decide. I left without signing, though part of me wondered if I was being foolish. $10,000 could buy me a fresh start, far from their influence. But running meant they won, meant they'd do this to someone else, meant the twins would grow up in this toxic cycle. That night, sleeping on Mia's couch, I stared at the ceiling and weighed my options. Take the money and run, or stay and fight with no guarantee of victory. My phone, reactivated through Mia's account, buzzed with a message from Helen. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't give up now. We're closer than you think. Attached was a document that made me sit up despite the late hour. The city had opened a formal investigation into my parents' property holdings based on our complaints. Criminal charges were being considered. Another text, this from Monica. Judge granted emergency injunction. Your inheritance is frozen pending investigation. They can't touch it now. Then another from Brett. Lily broke down in custody hearing. Admitted everything in front of judge. We're winning. I looked around Mia's tiny living room, at my entire life reduced to 3 garbage bags of donated clothes and salvaged items. My parents had taken everything from me in their retaliation. But in doing so, they'd revealed themselves as the monsters they'd always been. The offer expired without my signature. The war continued, but for the first time since that eviction notice appeared under my door, I believed we could win. My parents had made a critical error in their vicious retaliation. They'd shown everyone exactly who they were, and no amount of money or influence could hide the truth anymore. The next morning brought more eviction stories, more evidence, and more allies. My parents had created an army of enemies, and I was no longer fighting alone. Their empire was built on lies and exploitation, and we were going to bring it crashing down. Monica's office transformed into a war room over the next 2 weeks. Bankers' boxes lined the walls, filled with documentation from dozens of victims. What started as my fight for inheritance became something larger, a reckoning for years of exploitation. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Stan, my former restaurant boss, reached out through Jake. "I've been thinking about what happened to you," he said when we met at his office. "It wasn't right. If you want your job back, it's yours. Plus, I have something that might help your case." He produced security footage from the restaurant's external cameras that happened to capture the parking lot of my parents' real estate office across the street. The footage showed them moving banker boxes to their cars on multiple dates, boxes Monica identified as containing records they'd claimed were destroyed in a flood. "I've got 3 years of recordings," Stan explained. "My security company never deleted the old files. Your lawyer might find something useful." It was a goldmine we hadn't expected, and I wasn't too proud to cry with gratitude. The emergency court hearing Monica had requested came faster than expected. Judge Patricia Hawkins, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for despising financial predators, reviewed our initial evidence with visible disgust. "Let me understand this," she said, peering over her glasses at my parents' legal team. "Your clients used their daughter's identity to secure loans, stole her inheritance, and then attempted to extort free labor by threatening homelessness?" The lawyer squirmed but tried to deflect. Monica stood confidently, introducing evidence piece by piece. The forged signatures on loan documents. The hidden inheritance accounts. The pattern of targeting eldest daughters across multiple families. By the time she finished, my parents looked smaller in their expensive suits. But it was Brett's testimony that really turned the tide. He'd come prepared with recordings, financial documents, and a bombshell revelation. "Lily told me her parents have been planning this since Sarah was in high school," he testified. "They specifically discouraged her from applying to out-of-state colleges to keep her close for future exploitation." He produced emails between my parents from years ago, obtained during his divorce discovery, discussing how to maintain Sarah's availability for family needs. The calculated nature of their control was laid bare for everyone to see. The judge ordered an immediate freeze on all my parents' assets pending investigation. She also granted me emergency access to housing funds from my frozen inheritance, ending my couch-surfing existence. But we were just getting started. The community response was overwhelming. The Facebook group grew to over 1,000 members as former tenants, employees, and business associates shared their stories. Local journalists competed for exclusive interviews. My parents, who'd built their reputation on respectability, watched it crumble in real time. Helen coordinated with other family members I'd never known were sympathetic. Cousins came forward with their own stories of manipulation. My uncle Carl, my father's brother, revealed he'd been keeping records of financial irregularities for years but had been too afraid to act alone. "Your father threatened to ruin me if I ever spoke up," Carl told me over coffee. "But seeing you fight back, knowing I'm not alone anymore, it's time for truth." He provided documentation of tax fraud going back decades, evidence that would interest federal investigators. The investigation expanded daily. City inspectors found code violations in dozens of my parents' properties. The IRS opened an audit. Adult Protective Services investigated allegations of elder financial abuse against my grandmother before her death. Each agency found more crimes, more victims, more evidence of systematic exploitation. Lily's world imploded spectacularly. The custody hearing that should have been routine became a disaster when she arrived high on prescription pills, ranting about being persecuted. The judge awarded Brett emergency full custody and ordered Lily into evaluation. Without my free babysitting or Brett's financial support, she couldn't maintain her facade. My mother attempted damage control through a PR campaign that backfired spectacularly. She hired a publicist to paint me as a mentally unstable daughter jealous of her sister's success. But Monica was ready with receipts, every forged document, every stolen payment, every threatening text. The press conference my mother arranged became her public humiliation. Reporters had done their homework, asking pointed questions about specific properties, specific victims, specific frauds. Her practiced tears and victim narrative fell apart under scrutiny. "Mrs. Morrison, how do you explain this document showing you transferred your daughter's inheritance into an account used for your personal shopping?" one reporter asked, holding up evidence Monica had strategically leaked. My mother's fumbling non-answer became a viral video clip. My father tried a different approach, attempting to intimidate witnesses. He showed up at Mia's workplace, at Jake's apartment, at Monica's office, making veiled threats about consequences for lying. Each visit was recorded, each threat documented, adding witness intimidation to his growing list of charges. But their biggest mistake was underestimating Brett's determination to protect his children. He discovered Lily had been skimming from the twins' college funds, money his parents had provided. When he confronted my parents about it, they made the fatal error of offering him a bribe to stay quiet. Brett recorded the entire conversation. My parents explicitly admitting to various frauds, offering him a cut of stolen inheritance funds, threatening to help Lily get custody if he didn't cooperate. Monica played the recording at the next hearing, and even their own lawyers looked shocked. "Your Honor," Monica addressed Judge Hawkins, "this recording demonstrates consciousness of guilt and ongoing criminal conspiracy. We request immediate criminal referral and expansion of the asset freeze to prevent further victim harm." The judge agreed. What had started as a civil dispute over tenant rights had become a criminal investigation spanning multiple jurisdictions. FBI agents appeared at my parents' home with warrants. Their real estate office was raided. Computers, files, and evidence were seized. The community support transformed into practical help. A GoFundMe for my legal expenses raised $30,000 in a week. Job offers poured in from employers disgusted by what had happened to me. The nursing school I'd dreamed of attending reached out, offering to expedite my application and consider scholarship options. Stan gave me a promotion to restaurant manager, acknowledging I'd been underpaid for years. "Anyone who can handle what you've been through can handle dinner rush," he said with gruff kindness. The steady income and health insurance felt like miracles after months of instability. Monica compiled our evidence into a devastating RICO case. My parents hadn't just committed individual crimes, they'd run an ongoing criminal enterprise using family manipulation as their weapon. The federal prosecutor who reviewed our files actually whistled in appreciation. "This is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases I've seen," she told Monica and me. "Multi-generational, multi-state, hundreds of victims. Your parents aren't just facing civil penalties anymore. They're looking at serious prison time." The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents had threatened me with homelessness to control me. Now they faced losing not just their home but their freedom. They'd tried to steal my future to fund their lifestyle. Now their future consisted of legal battles and potential incarceration. As I moved into my new apartment, funded by emergency release from my inheritance, I felt the weight of months lifting. The space was small but mine, legally protected from any parental interference. Every piece of second-hand furniture felt like victory. My phone rang constantly with updates. Another victim coming forward. Another property entering foreclosure. Another criminal charge added to the indictment. The empire my parents had built on exploitation was collapsing, and they had only themselves to blame. Monica warned me the legal process would take years to fully resolve. There would be depositions, trials, appeals. But the immediate danger had passed. I was safe, housed, employed, and supported by a community that had formed from shared trauma and determination for justice. You know what the best part is? Monica asked during one of our strategy sessions. This case will set precedent. Other victims of family financial abuse will be able to point to it, use our strategies, find hope that they can fight back too. She was right. My story had become bigger than just my fight for freedom. It was proof that even the most entrenched family abuse could be challenged, that victims could find justice, that the powerful could be held accountable. As I prepared for the next phase of legal battles, I thought about the girl I'd been just months ago, exhausted and trapped, believing I had no options. She never could have imagined this outcome. But then again, my parents never imagined I'd fight back. Their greatest weapon had always been my isolation, my belief that I was alone. Their greatest mistake was pushing me so far that I had nothing left to lose. In trying to destroy me, they'd created their own destruction. The poetic justice of it all almost made the trauma worth it. The criminal trial began 6 months after that first eviction notice, 6 months that had transformed me from victim to survivor to warrior. The federal courthouse downtown became my second home as I testified, watched others testify, and saw the full scope of my parents' crimes laid bare for public consumption. My mother entered the courtroom each day dressed for sympathy, pearls and pastels designed to evoke a charitable grandmother rather than the calculating predator she was. My father maintained his businessman facade, custom suits unable to hide the fear in his eyes as evidence mounted. They sat with their team of expensive lawyers, burning through their frozen assets on legal fees. The prosecutor, Maria Santos, was a force of nature who'd taken our case personally. Financial abuse within families is epidemic, she told me during preparation. Your willingness to fight back publicly will help countless others. She wielded evidence like a sword, each document another cut to my parents' carefully constructed image. I testified for 3 days, detailing years of manipulation, control, and theft. The defense attorneys tried to paint me as ungrateful, greedy, mentally unstable. But Monica had prepared me well. I answered calmly, provided documentation for every claim, and watched the jury's expressions shift from skepticism to horror as the truth emerged. They stole my identity when I was 18, I explained, showing the forged loan documents. Used my credit to buy properties while telling me I wasn't responsible enough for a credit card. By the time I discovered it, I was hundreds of thousands in debt I never knew about. Other witnesses followed, each adding another layer to the pattern. Former tenants described illegal evictions. Employees revealed wage theft. Business partners detailed fraud. But it was Lily's testimony that shocked even me. She appeared as a hostile witness, compelled by subpoena and clearly under the influence of something. Her designer dress couldn't hide her deterioration. Without Brett's money or my babysitting, she'd spiraled completely. Her testimony veered wildly between defending our parents and admitting their crimes. Of course they used Sarah's information, she slurred from the stand. She owed them for raising her. We all did. That's how family works. When pressed for details, she revealed more than our parents' lawyers could contain. Hidden accounts, destroyed documents, plans to do the same to the twins when they grew older. The prosecutor asked her directly, "Did your parents tell you they planned to use Sarah for free childcare indefinitely?" Lily's laugh was bitter and unhinged. Indefinitely? They planned to move her into their house when they got older. Built a mother-in-law suite specifically for their future live-in nurse. Sarah was supposed to be grateful for the opportunity. My father's face went purple at this revelation. Their lawyers requested a recess, but the damage was done. The jury had heard it straight from the golden child's mouth. I was never a daughter to them, just a future servant they were grooming for exploitation. Brett testified with quiet dignity, providing financial records showing how my parents had mingled stolen funds with legitimate income. He'd hired a forensic accountant for his divorce who'd uncovered money laundering that made the FBI very interested. His custody of the twins was secure. Lily hadn't seen them in months. Helen took the stand with 30 years of evidence, chronicling the family pattern across generations. She'd brought photos, documents, letters from other relatives who'd been similarly exploited. The scope was staggering. My parents weren't just criminals, they were serial predators who happened to hunt within bloodlines. Every generation, they pick the responsible child, Helen explained. Usually the eldest daughter. They provide just enough support to create dependence, then gradually increase demands until that child has no life beyond serving family needs. She looked directly at my parents. I escaped. Sarah escaped. But how many didn't? The answer came from the gallery, packed with victims who'd traveled from 3 states to witness justice. Some were relatives I'd never known existed, written off as selfish for refusing servitude. Others were former tenants, employees, anyone who'd crossed my parents and paid the price. My parents' defense was pitiful. They claimed cultural differences, generational expectations, simple misunderstandings blown out of proportion. Their lawyers argued that family financial arrangements shouldn't be criminalized, that I was weaponizing the legal system out of spite. But Maria Santos had saved the best for last. She introduced evidence from my grandmother's estate lawyer, documents my parents thought they'd destroyed. My grandmother had explicitly stated her wishes. Money for my education, protection from my parents' tendency toward financial manipulation, her own words. She knew, I whispered to Monica as we reviewed the documents. Grandma knew what they were and tried to protect me. The tragedy of her death taking that protection hit fresh, grief mixing with vindication. The smoking gun came from an unexpected source. My father's secretary, granted immunity, revealed she'd been ordered to forge my signature on documents for years. She'd kept copies of everything, insurance against the day they might throw her under the bus. Her testimony was devastating, methodical, backed by a paper trail my parents never knew existed. During closing arguments, Maria Santos painted a picture of calculated predation spanning decades. The defendants didn't just steal money, she argued. They stole futures, dreams, the right to live freely. They perverted the sacred trust between parent and child into a weapon of control. The defense's closing was desperate, invoking family values and forgiveness. But the jury had heard too much, seen too much evidence of cruelty masquerading as love. They deliberated for only 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. I was in the bathroom when the verdicts were read, anxiety making me physically ill. Monica found me there, tears streaming down her face. Guilty. All counts. Both of them. We held each other and sobbed, years of pain finally finding release in justice. The sentencing hearing 2 months later was my final confrontation with the people who'd raised me. The judge allowed victim impact statements. I'd written mine carefully, wanting them to understand exactly what they'd destroyed. You taught me that love was conditional, that family was obligation, that I existed to serve your needs, I read, voice steady despite my shaking hands. But in trying to break me, you taught me strength. In isolating me, you taught me to find real family. In stealing my inheritance, you gave me the gift of knowing I could survive anything. I looked at them directly for the first time in months. My mother had aged decades, her perfect facade cracked beyond repair. My father seemed smaller, older, finally facing consequences he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. I succeeded despite you, not because of you. I'm in nursing school now, funded by the inheritance you tried to steal. I have a career, real friends, chosen family who love me without price tags. You took everything from me, and yet I have more than you ever will. I have freedom. Other victims spoke, painting a mosaic of pain that filled the courtroom with tears. The judge listened to it all, his expression grave. When he finally spoke, his words carried the weight of justice. The defendants systematically exploited those who should have been able to trust them most, he said. They perverted parental authority into a weapon of abuse. They stole not just money but dreams, opportunities, lives. He sentenced them each to 15 years in federal prison, plus restitution to all victims. My mother collapsed at the sentence, finally showing genuine emotion. My father tried to maintain dignity as bailiffs prepared to take them away. They looked at me one last time, perhaps hoping for forgiveness or mercy. I gave them neither, just the steady gaze of someone who'd survived their worst and emerged whole. As they were led away in handcuffs, Lily screamed from the gallery about unfairness, about family betrayal, about ingratitude. Security removed her as she raged, the golden child reduced to incoherent fury at losing her meal ticket. Outside the courthouse, victims and supporters gathered. Media covered the landmark case, but I was done being the center of attention. Monica handled the press while I stood with my real family, Mia, Jake, Stan, Helen, Brett, with the twins who'd finally have a chance at normal childhoods. "How do you feel?" a reporter managed to ask before Monica intervened. I thought about the question, about the journey from that eviction notice to this moment of justice. "Free," I answered simply. "For the first time in my life, I'm truly free." The reporter wanted more, but that was all I had to give. Freedom was enough. Freedom was everything. Freedom was the inheritance my parents never meant to give me, bought with pain but worth every tear. As we walked away from the courthouse, spring sun warming our faces, I realized the truth. They'd threatened to raise my rent, thinking it would break me. Instead, they'd raised my standards, my strength, my understanding of my own worth. They'd created their own downfall by underestimating the power of truth and the strength of survivors united. The empire built on exploitation was gone. In its place stood something stronger, a community of survivors who'd found their voices, claimed their power, and proved that justice might be delayed but couldn't be denied forever. And at the center of it all, a girl who'd refused to accept that family meant servitude, who'd fought for the radical idea that she deserved to be free. 2 years after that eviction notice changed my life, I stood in my cap and gown, preparing to walk across the stage at nursing school graduation. The auditorium was packed with families celebrating their graduates, but my section was especially loud. My chosen family had all come to witness this moment that once seemed impossible. Helen sat in the front row, tears already flowing. Beside her, Mia wore a handmade Sarah's #1 fan shirt that made me laugh every time I saw it. Jake had closed the restaurant early so the entire staff could attend. Monica brought her law partners, who'd followed the case that set new precedents for family financial abuse prosecution. Even Brett was there with the twins, who'd made me cards covered in glitter and crooked hearts. The inheritance my grandmother had left me, finally released with interest and penalties, had covered nursing school with money left over. But more than financial freedom, I'd gained something priceless. The knowledge that I deserved to pursue my dreams, that my worth wasn't measured in service to others' needs. "Sarah Morrison," the dean called, and my section erupted in cheers. As I walked across that stage, accepting my diploma, I thought about the journey that brought me here. From sleeping on Mia's couch, homeless and hopeless, to standing here as class valedictorian, headed to a job at the city's best hospital. The speech I gave as valedictorian was about resilience, about choosing your own family, about the strength found in community. I didn't mention my parents by name, but everyone knew my story. It had become larger than just my experience, inspiring others trapped in similar situations to seek help. After the ceremony, we gathered at Stan's restaurant for celebration. He'd insisted on hosting, closing to the public for our private party. The walls were decorated with photos from the past 2 years, court victories, apartment warming parties, study groups, moments of joy carved out of struggle. "I have something for you," Monica said, pulling me aside. She handed me an envelope that I opened carefully. Inside was a check for $20,000, my share of the settlement from the civil suits against my parents' estate. "The rest is in trust for other victims, as you requested. But this is yours, free and clear." I'd insisted most of the money go toward a fund helping other family abuse victims escape and rebuild. The Morrison Family Abuse Survivors Fund had already helped 50 people leave toxic situations. It felt like the best possible use of money gained through so much pain. Brett approached with the twins, now 5 and thriving in therapy and stable homes. Aunt Sarah. Emma launched herself at me, Marcus close behind. They'd been in my life properly now, with scheduled visits that involved actual supplies and reasonable hours. The children my parents had tried to weaponize had become genuine joys in my life. Lily's doing better, Brett told me quietly while the twins attacked the dessert table. The court-mandated rehab finally stuck. She's working at a grocery store, living in a halfway house. She asked me to give you this. The letter from Lily was short, clearly written with therapeutic guidance. She apologized without excuses, acknowledged the harm she'd caused, and wished me well. She didn't ask for forgiveness or contact, just wanted me to know she was trying to become someone different. I tucked it away to process later, not ready to open that door but glad she was getting help. My phone buzzed with a notification from the blog I'd started about surviving family financial abuse. Another message from someone who'd found strength in my story to leave their own toxic situation. These messages came daily now, proof that speaking truth had power beyond personal vindication. Time for presents. Mia announced, producing a wrapped box that contained a stethoscope engraved with Dr. Morrison, healing hearts since day one. The joke about my future doctorate made everyone laugh, but the sentiment behind it brought fresh tears. As the party continued around me, I stepped outside for air and found Helen there, looking at the stars. Your grandmother would be so proud, she said softly. Not just of the degree or the victory, but of the person you've become through it all. I wish she could have seen it, I admitted. Wish she could have known her protection worked, even if delayed. Helen smiled, pulling me into a warm hug that felt like family should feel. She knew you were strong enough to fight when the time came. That's why she left those breadcrumbs in her will, knowing someday you'd need them. We stood together in comfortable silence, two women who'd escaped the Morrison trap, carrying forward a legacy of resistance. The next morning, I started my first shift as a registered nurse at Mercy General. My supervisor, aware of my history, had assigned me to the financial abuse assessment team. My personal experience would help identify patients trapped in similar situations, offering resources before it was too late. My first patient was an elderly woman whose daughter controlled her finances. The fear in her eyes was familiar, the way she flinched when asked about family support. I sat with her, shared a bit of my story, watched her shoulders relax as she realized someone understood. Is it really possible to escape? She asked in a whisper. I thought of my parents in federal prison, of Lily in recovery, of my own journey from trapped to free. Yes, I told her firmly. It's hard and scary and sometimes you lose everything. But freedom is possible. Help exists. You don't have to do it alone. I connected her with Monica's team, who'd expanded their practice to focus on elder abuse cases. My apartment now was small but beautiful, decorated with plants and photos of my chosen family. The nursing textbooks were replaced with continuing education materials, my dreams evolving rather than dying. On hard days, I looked around this space that was truly mine and remembered when I thought I'd never escape. A knock interrupted my evening routine. I opened the door to find Stan, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Sarah, I have a confession. I've been carrying this guilt for 2 years. He explained how my parents had threatened his business if he didn't fire me, how he'd caved to protect his employees. I should have fought for you then, he said. Should have stood up to them. I was a coward, and I'm sorry. The apology wasn't necessary but was healing nonetheless. We talked for hours about how abusers create complicity through fear, how courage often comes only after collective action. That weekend, I attended a wedding. Jake was marrying his longtime boyfriend in a ceremony that celebrated chosen family. As I gave my maid of honor speech, I talked about how crisis reveals true character, how Jake had shown up for me when blood relatives failed. Family, I said, raising my champagne glass, isn't about shared DNA or legal obligations. It's about choosing each other, again and again, especially when it's hard. It's about Jake driving me to lawyer appointments. It's about Mia sharing her couch and never making me feel like a burden. It's about everyone in this room who proves daily that love isn't supposed to come with price tags. The dance floor filled with people who'd stood by me, fought with me, celebrated my victories as their own. This was wealth my parents never understood: relationships without transaction, support without manipulation, love without conditions. Monica pulled me aside during the reception with news. The FBI wants to interview you again. They're building similar cases in 3 other states, using our evidence as a template. You might have to testify again, but this time to help other families find justice. I agreed without hesitation. The legal battles had been exhausting, but if my testimony could prevent one other person from enduring what I had, it was worth it. The ripple effects of speaking truth continued spreading, reaching victims I'd never meet but who might find freedom through shared strategy. As the wedding wound down, I found myself on the balcony with Helen, Mia, and Monica, the women who'd become my pillars. We toasted to survival, to chosen family, to futures that belonged to us alone. Your parents thought they were raising your rent, Mia said with a laugh. Instead, they raised a warrior. We clinked glasses, the lights of the city sparkling below us like possibilities. 2 years ago, I'd crumpled an eviction notice in despair. Now I stood surrounded by love, pursuing my dreams, helping others escape their own traps. My parents had threatened to raise my rent to control me. They never expected I'd raise my standards instead. The greatest revenge, I'd learned, wasn't their imprisonment or financial ruin. It was living well, freely, joyfully in spite of their attempts to break me. It was breaking cycles of abuse, choosing healing over hatred, building something beautiful from the ashes of what they'd burned. As I drove home that night to my own space, with my own money, toward my own future, I thought about the girl who'd once believed she had no options. I wished I could tell her it would be okay, that the price of freedom would be high but worth every penny. My phone lit up with a text from a nursing school classmate: "Coffee tomorrow to study for boards?" Normal, everyday friendship without agenda or manipulation. I smiled, typing back confirmation, grateful for the ordinary beauty of a life I'd claimed for myself. The road ahead still had challenges. Therapy to process trauma, boundaries to maintain, a career to build. But for the first time in my life, those challenges were mine to face on my terms. No one could threaten my housing, steal my dreams, or convince me I existed to serve their needs. I was free. Completely, brilliantly, permanently free. And that freedom, fought for and won through community and courage, was an inheritance no one could ever steal again. The last thing I did before bed was update my blog with a simple message: to everyone still trapped, you deserve freedom. You deserve dreams. You deserve a life that belongs to you. It's possible. Hold on. Thousands of miles away, someone read those words and made their first call for help. The cycle of liberation continued, one story at a time, proving that sometimes the greatest gift we can give is proof that escape is possible. My parents had threatened to raise my rent. Instead, they'd raised an army of survivors. And we were just getting started. So, what would you do if your family tried to control you through financial manipulation? Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and finding your own path. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics. Remember, you deserve a life that's truly yours, free from manipulation and control. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth isn't measured by what you do for others, but by the love and respect you show yourself. Until next time, keep choosing freedom.